Hello and welcome back to Perspective Podcast with myself, Jess, Millie and our special guest, Max. So Max is here today to talk to us a little bit about his masters and his kind of educational journey in product design. Do you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Max Pownall, so I'm currently the course leader of the BA Product Design course at Nottingham Trent, which these two lovely people are part of. So yeah, I started here end of 2017 as a lecturer and kind of worked my way up to various different things. But before that, I was a product designer for 10 years out in industry. So I graduated a long time ago now, in 2008. From Staffs Uni, and I kind of worked my way around the country, various different places, doing different jobs. Started as a junior designer, working up to kind of head of design at this small place near here, and then kind of came to work with the university and never looked back from there, I guess. Did some kind of fun stuff of education, some more qualifications, and then seeing where things go.
What was your favourite job that you had in industry?
What was my favourite job? So my probably favourite job of all the jobs I've had is this one now. I think this is the most interesting variety of work, although it's kind of same the year. There's like a yearly cycle of people coming through. You see such a variety of ideas and different people and different thoughts. It's quite nice. I think kind of reflected recently about my career and my skills and what I was good at, and I kind of realised from being a designer and things, my skill was always in, I was never the type of person who's got to come up with the amazing, innovative, world-changing ideas. Part of my research, we can get into this if you want to, about creativity. There's different types of creativity. So there's big C, little c, pro C and mini C. And big C is like Einstein, or like somebody inventing some world-changing, the first iPhone, kind of world-changing things. And then the other creativities are kind of variations of that, which are still very important, but they're in different scales. So little c is about making a new recipe in the kitchen or something, and the kind of scale goes between there. And so I realised, having done my research and things, that I was never really a big C person. I was kind of somewhere in the middle where I could see a good idea and I could think, oh yeah, you could do that with that, and you could build on this, and you could create it like this, or you could make it like this, or here's this idea, how can we realise this to a product? And I think that was my skill, and I think that's why I really like this job, because that's basically what it is. It's talking to you guys and seeing these sparks of ideas and being like, oh wow, that's a really good idea. But you could do this. And then sometimes the people who come up with really big ideas, they struggle with how to kind of implement them and how to kind of make those ideas real. So that's where it's nice, where like, oh, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? And then someone's like, oh, Millie's like, oh yeah, you could do this and this. And it's that kind of back and forth, I think, is the nicest thing. In terms of my kind of industry jobs, they're all very different. So after I left university, I went to Blackpool to design street furnishings, is the nice way to call them, but recycling bins. Litter bins, ashtrays, recycling bins, dog poo bins, all kind of things like that, for a company called Glasden. But they were very much about new designers, like getting fresh graduates out and kind of promoting them up and learning a skill there. So that was interesting, kind of a real insight into manufacturing. I suppose I left university not knowing much about the real world of kind of manufacturing and things, so it was nice to go there because it was all injection molding, rotational molding, things like that. So that was nice to experience that as living away from family completely, and kind of being separate and on your own. It was quite a nice thing. Then after that, where did I go after that? I then worked for a company very different, of much more kind of engineering, I guess, the kind of RBSC side, looking at assisted bathing baths. So imagine a bath that you'd have at home with a surfboard in the top of it. So you can fill the bath up, and then the water's filling up underneath this surfboard. And then if you're in a wheelchair or got really low mobility, you can transfer smoothly onto this surfboard and then press a button, or your carer can press a button, and the whole bath lifts up around you.
Wow.
So rather than a sit-in bath shower thing where you have to get in it, sit it naked and then let it warm up and fill up, you could get into a bath straight away and it's warm. And then if you had a problem or a seizure or anything, you could hit a button and the water just drops and straight away you're out and straight of kind of into other things. So I worked with them. They didn't have a design department there, so my job was to kind of create a design department things, which was interesting. But I got to see lots of kind of care homes and people who kind of really needed these products. That was nice. And then after that, I worked for a company, moved over to Derby, and worked for a company who do single-use surgical products. So that was kind of heavy manufacturing of extruded products and things, some injection molding, but anything that a hospital or a surgeon would use once. So a suction device or a catheter or some tubing or anything like that. So that was, again, a really kind of different insight into the medical world. And I learned a lot about kind of how to save money in lots of different places. It was a lot about designing the machines that make things. So 5 people had a job of sticking these things together, these pressure control devices for a surgeon. How can we make a machine that automates that process to guarantee every one of those is right and works? Because you don't want to get into surgery and discover your suction thing's blocked because it hasn't been made correctly. So I worked there for a while. And then the final job I had before I coming here was just north of Nottingham for a company people may have come across from schools called TTS. And they do educational resources. So anything a school would buy, so from glue sticks to paper, all the way up to the fun early years, light up toys, interactive programming things, and everything in between there. So that was really, really interesting. And then I kind of hit the point of my career where I thought, where do I go from now? The kind of the trajectory I was going in was into kind of management and kind of design managing. Do I want to do that? Do I want to stay where I am and kind of do the design of things? But then to progress in that world, you get to a point where you start managing people rather than managing projects. And then this came along here, and I thought, oh, this sounds interesting. Yeah, here I am.
So was there just like a job opening here then, or did somebody refer you? Or?
So how did I come across it? So I think I came across an advert. So we have hourly paid lecturers, so specialists. We can kind of get them in on kind of informal contracts. So we get a lot of our alumni back for kind of people who want to do a bit of teaching but have full-time jobs and things. Yeah. We kind of come back for that. So I think I saw one of those jobs advertised and came in to speak to Jim when I was here. And as I walked in, I was like, I haven't been to universities for however long, 12 years. And I walked in, I was like, oh, wow, this place is really cool. And I'd look around and saw what people were doing. I was like, yeah, this is a cool place to work, but I don't want to do hourly paid. Like, I've got a full-time job. I want security. I've got a young family and things. Yeah. And I was a bit like, not really for me. And then always kind of went home and talked to my wife about it. I was like, oh man, that place was so cool to work at. And then just kind of waited, I think. And then eventually a job appeared, and little did I know that the people I spoke to here at the same time were thinking the same thing of like, oh man, he'd be really good to get in. I just wish we had the opportunity for it. Yeah. And then the stars aligned and came here. But the strange thing about getting the job here was that I was driving back from that TTS toy job, and I got an email. As I got in my car to drive home, I got an email saying, you haven't got the job, you've been unsuccessful after the interview and everything. I was like, oh, gutted. So I drove home far too fast, far too dangerously. Got home, pulled into my drive, really mad, and then my phone rang, and it was Jim, the head of the course, and he was like, oh, do you want the job? And I was like, what? I've just driven home, and all this stuff's happened, and I didn't think I was getting the job. He's like, oh no, I don't know why you got that email. Yeah, come in. So the highs and lows of that. But yeah, never looked back since, really. I really like working here. Seeing what you guys are up to, doing really interesting stuff as well, things like this podcast, things I've been involved in some other podcasts and things, which I'd never would have done in industry. So having the kind of the two sides of education industry is really a nice thing to have.
When did you do your masters, and what made you do it?
Well, that's a good question. Why did I want to do it? So I graduated last year. So I did a master's in education at NTU, part-time with my job. And why did I do it? I suppose because kind of thinking about my career and the skills and kind of teachings I could give to the students, I kind of felt like I knew the design bit, like I talked about the idea of getting the best out of students and working with them in those different types of creativity. I kind of knew that, but I felt like I was a bit lacking in the theory of like why creativity is like it is, why people learn in different ways and things. So I kind of felt like it was a piece I needed to add in, kind of kind of fill in my skills, I guess. And then also, I suppose my kind of my family and my school has always kind of driven me to be like, what's the next thing? Like, it's maybe in a bad thing, good work-life balance is good, but also kind of what's the next thing? How do we go from here? And maybe PhD and things like that are in my future potentially.
Oh.
And kind of a master's is like a stepping stone to that. You kind of need certain requirements to get there.
Yeah.
Whether I go that far, I'm not quite sure. Whether I do a full PhD, it's 7 years of my life and 70,000 words, I'm not entirely sure I'd go that far. But yeah, it kind of gives me those options to kind of allow me to do different things. And yeah, kind of making me feel a bit more like I'm the fuller picture, I guess. Kind of adding that educational thing with the industry world as well. Because I feel like it was a track I didn't know existed, kind of staying in education, design education. When I went off into industry, my university course was very much get a job. Like, it doesn't matter what that job is when you leave uni, get a job, because once you've got your degree, tick that off, all anyone cares about is experience. What are you going to do beyond there?
Yeah.
So my uni was like, get a job, go out, get a job, do whatever it is, which is why I ended up in Blackpool doing bins. And I never knew that there was this other kind of path, and maybe I wouldn't have taken that at that point, but it would have been nice to kind of know, certainly seeing what NTU do with all the work we do with industries.
Yeah.
They get loads out of it from us, as well as helping us. They kind of see, oh, they're doing that. That's pretty cool. We could get involved in that. So I quite like that idea of the two things feeding each other, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think probably like the main thing of when I think about like doing a master's and then working is like, how do you balance that? Like, are you kind of given like study days, or how do you strike that balance between working, education, and then home? Yeah,
it's very hard. So I was fortunate enough that the university are quite understanding as they would be about education and things. It would be really hard in industry, I think, but I do know some people who did it, and the course I did was a part-time course. There was lots of school teachers on that course looking to kind of improve themselves, to try and work their way up to head teaching or other kind of developments, and they found it really hard to kind of manage a school teachers kind of workload with doing that masters in the evening and things. So it's about managing it, I think, a bit kind of like your projects and kind of time management and spinning all those plates. It's about making sure you've got the right kind of things in place with your family and your home life and your work life to kind of make sure that it all works. And then the way I've discovered that I work is I need like blocks of time. So I need to be able to kind of, this day or this 5 hours, I'm doing my masters. I'm not turning my emails on. I'm not turning Teams on. I'm like basically away from the university, because this is my master's day that I'm kind of forcing out, and I'm going to concentrate on that. Because certainly with education things, I mean, it's harder to switch off from them, I would say. It's a kind of, it will be a thing for everybody going out into industry. It's easy to get swept into that kind of, that way of working that you guys have worked now, where you live and breathe your projects. You kind of, every second is kind of thinking about it. It's always chewing away, always churning away. And it's easy for you to carry that on into industry. And I found one of the reasons I came here, again, was that better work-life balance, because I found I was stewing on work all the time. It was almost kind of ticking over my background. Oh, I made this, or that show's coming up next week.
Yeah.
So it's about kind of forcing that mentality onto yourself, like we always talk to you guys about, like treat it like a 9 to 5. That's fine for us to say, but in reality, you ebb and flow, and towards the end of projects, you graft non-stop. You have to kind of make sure you're kind of mentally robust enough, I suppose, to kind of say, no, this is my time. Like, I'm going to work really hard, and then I'm going to try my hardest to switch off from it, or do something I really like to do, go to the gym or do a hobby or whatever, that kind of switches off that time to give you that separation. And it's only harder if you're trying to work and do masters or education as well, because that switch off time then becomes masters time. And so you have to be strict and say, no, this is my, like, I used to do Thursday evening, so we used to have some online sessions. 6 till 9 was my kind of taught sessions in the evening. So before that, the Thursday, I was like, right, I'm working on my masters today. I'm going to have all these things, and then I'll go to that session, and then maybe work a bit more after that. But after that, I'm going from Friday, I'm off, I'm back to work, and then working at the weekends and things. So yeah, I think kind of compartmentalizing is an important thing for you to be able to do, and then just making sure you're balancing all those plates right. So education with work gets harder when you've got a family and you've got friends, and you need to keep those kind of plates spilling. I always imagine it as like you've got a pie chart. So imagine you've got a pie chart, and you can only fill that 100%. So your life and your brain can only go to 100%. And so your pie chart has to change depending on your priorities. So at the minute for you guys, hopefully it's maybe at like 45% on your self-directed projects, and then there's a bit of like 15% of social life and things. But then you have a family section of that comes in too, and you've got, I'm really into a sport, or I'm really into a hobby or something. So that kind of eating up. And so it's about kind of managing that and kind of your pie chart. I'm thinking, well, it's okay to let that bit slide for a little bit. Like my friends, I need to really concentrate on getting my project in. So I'm going to let that bit slide for a bit, but then I'm going to build that back up afterwards over the summer. So I think having that flexibility, but to allow those pieces of pie to change shape, but not let one kind of take over and burst out the size.
That's a really interesting.
Sim.
I don't know how I imagined it. It wasn't as a pie chart, because I think I always saw it as like, I felt like I had 20% extra I had to do.
Right, okay.
And I could kind of I don't know how it was in my brain, but I think I always felt like I wasn't doing that 20% rather than just readjust what was fitting in. So I kind of had like...
What would be in that 20% that you were...
I don't know, whatever it was at the time. It could be anything. I think...
What's in that 20% now? What's there at the minute?
Probably my self-directed
right, okay. So you're 120% on self-directed project, then, yeah.
I'm doing too much of other stuff.
Right.
Just pushing it to the side. But I like that. I really like that. I'm going to try and think of that now.
I always think in analogies. Like I have so many that I've made across my mind in the course of this year. At the moment, the one I've got is like, you know that like fairground games, and you like pick a horse and they run across the thing. That's what I'm at the moment. There's like a self-directed horse that's going,
yeah.
And then there's like a looking for jobs horse, and then there's like social life and going out and stuff like that. So they kind of set off in a race each week, and I see where they end up. But yeah, I think it's always good to kind of have something like a mental vision.
Yeah. Do you feel like that horse one is like helpful to you, or do you feel like you're constantly like
running?
Yeah.
I think it's kind of what you said about having things like whirring in your mind all the time. Because I think what I really liked on placement is that I'd shut my laptop at 5 and it'd be gone. Like I wouldn't think about it. But with self-direct and stuff, it's so much more active. It's constantly there, which I think is a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I'll be out like doing whatever, and something will come to me. Like it'll be because I picked something up in a certain way, or I saw somebody move somewhere, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's brilliant, that's exactly what I needed. But at the same time, like sometimes I'll like wake up in the morning and I'll realize I'm already thinking about work, and I'm like, oh my god, like
dreaming about work.
Yeah, literally that. And I'm like, what the hell, like go back to sleep. But yeah, time management is
interesting
key.
to hear you talking in that way, because that's for me kind of what a good designer is seeing those things around the world and kind of thinking, oh, that relates to that and that relates to that. It's about making sure that you're doing that in the right way within your brain, I suppose, isn't it? You say shutting off, but kind of keeping those, oh, that doesn't work very well, or that's a really interesting idea. Maybe I could use that kind of drawing inspiration. Jim always talks about designers should read everything but design. They should look at kind of everything else around the world. And that's kind of an interesting thing to think of. But yeah, you just got to be careful of that, I guess, is kind of my advice when you go into
yeah, definitely. Yeah, got to be pretty self-aware, I think.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Because I know another really good analogy that's probably slightly different that I learned on some mental health training course I did here, which, sorry if anyone's heard this before, was about the idea of a bucket. Have you heard about this, the bucket idea? Do you know, Jess, you know that one?
I don't know.
No, so the idea is that everyone has a bucket, and your bucket gets full of stuff throughout the day and throughout kind of your life, and it's kind of different stresses, different kind of all your life kind of gets pulled into this bucket. And eventually, if you've got a closed bucket, eventually all those things will pour in like you're added 20%. And eventually your bucket overflows and you have a breakdown, or you go crazy, or whatever. You have a freak out. So within everyone's bucket, there should be like a drain at the bottom. There should be a way of kind of draining. A tap kind of that releases a tap. And you can have multiple taps, or you can have one big tap. And those taps are all the things that you do that kind of help you keep that water level in the bucket down. So that might be exercising, that might be reading, that might be making Lego, whatever that is.
Yeah.
But you can have good and bad taps. So you can have taps that are really rusty, which might be like alcohol or partying too much or whatever else. And then you can have good taps, which could be reading or looking after your mental health or doing yoga or whatever. And I really like that analogy as well of kind of, you get like, you can take so much and at a point it all overflows and you're like, oh my God, I can't cope with this anymore. I'm freaking out. So if you can kind of find healthy taps to help you kind of keep that down, because everyone's bucket is always 3/4 full just with life. And I really like that one. I use that one a lot to kind of myself clever. To kind of think, what's the tap? What can I turn on and off? Maybe it kind of feeds into the pie chart idea as well. Yeah. What can I kind of fill up with this or turn that tap off for a bit? Yeah, I like that one.
I think also this is a bit of a random one, but my dad used to tell me this one about they used to try catch monkeys and put peanuts in this jar, but the jar was only wide enough so they could put their hand in, but when they gripped the nut, they couldn't pull it back out.
Okay, yeah.
So they were so desperate for the nuts that they wouldn't want to let go even though someone was going to come and get them or whatever. So in the end, they'd have to succumb to it because they couldn't let go of the nut. But if they let go, then they'd be free.
Right, okay.
So sometimes I visualise all the work as the nut. Let it go and run away.
Yeah, no, I think it was interesting for you guys because with the way we kind of teach you and the way we kind of the things we talk about, and you can kind of feel how we do that to you as well sometimes in terms of like, oh, just be free, don't worry about it, like try things out. And then we're kind of, by doing that, you're like, but my nut is my degree and I can't let go of that because I've still got to pass and I've still got to do these things. And we're like, sometimes, communicating that to you guys in the right way, I suppose, about that it's okay to let go, take one finger off the nut. And you get the nut, it will fall out of the hole itself kind of by letting go of it. There's a tricky challenge.
Did you find that when you were obviously a student for your masters, was it difficult, like switching back into being a student from being a tutor?
We've been going out all the time. I didn't do any of that. That's a good question. It was different. I felt separate to the other people on the course. I think because I worked here and I was the lecturer, like the person that was teaching me. I felt like, I don't know, like I wasn't the same as them, but then also I was. I mean, doing it part-time is a very different experience anyway, and it was at the Clifton campus as well, so we didn't see each other that much as well. But I don't know, I almost kind of used it, I guess a bit like you said, Jess, with the always looking for other ideas. Yeah. I think I kind of took what they were doing and kind of found that really interesting, kind of asked loads of questions. And we ended up doing a project with one of the ladies off my master's. She is an educational officer or something at a super high risk prison. And so I did a project with her with the first years, last year or the year, it must have been the year before, designing for like prison life. And kind of prisoners do a lot of stuff with matchsticks without the head bit on them, kind of making matchstick things. So I just got talking to her and it was kind of, that's really interesting, we should do something together. So I guess I kind of put my designer hat on, I suppose, with that. But I didn't necessarily find the kind of the power dynamic difficult or anything. Like they were the tutors and they knew, I didn't know anything about education, so they knew what they were talking about. So I just kind of like took what and asked questions based on them to learn in that way. But the opportunity for me was talking to other people and seeing all the different things they were doing. There was one guy who did his masters on like girls' perception of PE and like how that kind of they perceive it differently to boys, and that was really interesting. The girl that worked in the prison was really interesting. Everyone had a kind of really interesting different stories, and it was just nice to get their perspectives.
What did you do your masters on?
So I did my masters on understanding the undergraduate students, so your guys' perception of creativity. So how creative they thought they were, and could we kind of change that and challenge that. But as we talked about before, kind of hopefully you guys found with your dissertations, what you set out to do isn't necessarily what you always find out is what you've done. So yeah, I wanted to look at, what did I start with? I started with working with children, so like 5-year-olds. Everyone thinks they're super creative, like they come up with crazy ideas, they're wacky, they're unconstrained, they do crazy things. So if we could get students in the classroom with 5-year-olds, does that make the students more creative, and does that kind of bring the wackiness out of them, because the schooling they've gone through has restricted that, has taught them this is you do this process, you do it this way, and that's it. And a lot of what we try to do here is about trying to break that down and kind of get people to think more freely. So that was what I set out to do. And so some of the second years from last year came to my daughter's school, worked with their class on a space themed project. So basically the students were there to kind of take these crazy ideas from the kids and make them into something, and then take them back to show the kids the things that they've come up with, to kind of show the children that they can, by becoming designers and following that design path, they can kind of create their dreams. They can kind of create things they want to be and become designers. But then also in the background to assess how that affected the students' perception of how creative they were. So I think it worked really well for the children, because there was one kid who was like, I want to be a designer now. And then I spoke to his school teacher in a couple of months later, and she said since that session, we've built around him wanting to be a designer, because he was really switched off. He didn't want to learn to read and write and things. And they said, well, to be a designer, you need to go to university, you need to get good GCSEs, so you need to know how to write and to read. And so that kind of built onto him, which for me was kind of the most successful part of the masters. But actually, throughout all that research, what I discovered was around creativity and the way we teach it, and the fact that these categories that people aren't aware of, but we also are aware of in terms of this big C, little c thing, that's a bit unhelpful. And there's actually a scale in the middle somewhere where you start on a path of creativity, and you can get more creative, you can build within there. But it doesn't matter that you don't ever get to big C. It doesn't matter that you don't ever change the world, because you've made a difference and impact as you go through. And it's about that improvement and that journey. And that was the thing that I realised was the 5-year-olds weren't more creative. Actually the undergrad students were more creative, because it was their creativity to take what the kid had said, a unicorn with roller skates on, and make that into a realistic thing. That type of creativity they were infinitely better. The kids maybe could come up with a crazy fishing for moon cheese as one of the ideas they came up with. They were good at that initial spark, but then the students had loads of creativity to develop those ideas. But they didn't know that. They didn't see that as being kind of creativity. And so, yes, having kind of discovered that from doing that research and setting off to do one thing and discovering a kind of other thing, that's kind of set me on this path now to kind of try and do more with that and try and get people to be more creative.
Brilliant.
I think that's really interesting, because people often ask, or people see from us that we are creative, and we're doing a creative degree, but also they can see it in our character. But I think when you reflect on your own creativity, you can't see it, because you're just like, well, it's just obvious. Like this goes to this and that, and you take it from here, and then you realise that not everyone can do that. Not everyone can actually see like a plain box and think about what can go in it, how it would work, who would carry it, who's it for, this and that.
Absolutely.
And I think that's why, it's nice to actually hear that, I guess, because you kind of take it for granted, don't you? You're kind of thinking about all of the hard skills you can do, like, I can do CAD, I can sketch, I'm okay at this, I'm like, this is fine, but you don't think about all the thinking that's going on behind it when you're actually like working.
And that's the biggest thing, the biggest shock that you'll potentially have out in industry if you go and work at a design consultancy or some massive company. Everyone's going to kind of be like you. But if you go and work for some smaller places where I did, you're kind of seen as the weird one. They're like, he's the designer. Like, what does he do? I just do accounts, or I just do like data management. I don't really understand what your job is or what you do. And then you kind of realize exactly that you kind of brain works in a different way, and the kind of creativity is always flowing, as you talked about, Jess.
Always there.
Yeah, when it's like the conversation we had earlier in the week where you were like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I don't know what I know. And I was like, well, you know this, you know process, you know how to do, you've done 4 years of work here. You've kind of grown and developed in a particular path. So and you don't realise being surrounded by really good design students, everyone's kind of competing and pushing each other up and things. But in the real world, we're kind of different. We kind of think in a different way.
Yeah, that's nice. I like it.
And embrace that, I think. Embrace that difference and kind of
Absolutely.
creativity. I think that's because we're the world changers. And that's what we want you to be. You know, we want everyone here to kind of change things, whether in a small area or a massive area. We should be pushing and encouraging you guys to do the new things that need to be done and make those changes. So think differently for doing that.
So final question, just a quick one. What advice would you give to someone that's currently at a design crossroad, multiple streets to go down?
So you guys are at an interesting position in your lives. It's kind of maybe the last time you'll have full control, I guess, the kind of where do you want to go? Scary thought to think, maybe. But those buckets and those pie charts, other things come into them as you go later. So I guess it's really thinking about what's best for you and what you want to do with your lives and where you want to go. And maybe you don't know, but that's kind of okay as well to not know. And you will see again, like we talked about, the idea of people, you guys all being creative and all pushing each other. That will be the same will be happening in kind of people's careers. So some people have jobs already. Some people have no idea what they want to do. Some people want to go to education. Some people want to go and do something completely different that's not design. And I think it's kind of acknowledging that and knowing that's okay, that everyone's journey is different. And every path is the right path for them. And so trying not to compare and trying not to think, I really, really want their job, or I really want to go and work for TUI, touring the world or something. Think about what's right for you now. And as I say, you might not know what that choice is. You've got time. You've got time to kind of think about it and just be open to opportunities. Like we talked about, looking at the world and being visible around the world. Looking at kind of see what's the problems you can see. Also look for those opportunities that maybe it's a conversation with somebody at Degree Show leads to an interview or a job, or maybe it's staying in university and thinking, maybe I want to do a postgrad, I want to do a bit more education. Maybe it's becoming a teacher because I want to kind of pass on the knowledge I've built already, or I don't want people to live the path that I've lived. I want people to see a different path or a better path through design or something. So I think it's about being true to yourself and not trying not to compare with everybody, because everyone is so different. Everyone comes from so many different places at university. Everyone's backgrounds are different. Everyone's futures are different, and whatever your future is a good future, I think, would be my advice.
Oh,
lovely.
Perfectly
answered.
That's
a good answer.
Great.
Thanks so much for watching. We've been Perspective Podcast. We've got some really exciting content coming up. So keep tuned in, and thanks for watching. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.